Rain hammered the tin roof of a lonely diner when a young woman served coffee to 3 strangers whose tattoos matched the one her mother had spent a lifetime hiding. That night didn't start a story. It uncovered one already written in blood and smoke. Stay till the end, hit like and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from, if you think some secrets never stop burning. The rain had been falling since dawn, turning the Missouri sky into a dull gray sheet that pressed against the earth. Inside Darwin's diner, the world felt smaller, warmer, and lonelier all at once. The neon sign out front flickered between red and blue, throwing weak light through the fogged windows. Zira Colburn, a young black waitress with tired eyes and a patient kind of beauty, moved between the booths with a rag in hand, wiping the same table for the 3rd time. She was used to the quiet, used to the hum of the fridge, the hiss of the coffee maker, and the distant rhythm of trucks passing along Route 39. The diner had been her world since she turned 19, the only place that didn't ask her about her past or her plans. For years, she'd stayed stuck between dreams and duty, watching the rain trace the same crooked paths down the window. She didn't notice at first when the air changed, when the silence shifted from ordinary to heavy. It began with vibration. A deep, steady tremor beneath her shoes, faint at first, then growing until the mugs on the counter rattled. Her heart skipped once. Then came the sound, 3 engines, distinct and unhurried, rumbling closer, like a warning from another world. Zira froze mid-wipe. She'd heard motorcycles before. Truckers and travelers often stopped by, but this sound carried authority like thunder that knew its name. The noise grew louder, then stopped. Outside, through the blur of rain, 3 silhouettes appeared, broad-shouldered, leather-clad, and utterly still. For a brief, hopeful second, Zira thought they might move on. Instead, the door opened with a sharp ring of the bell, and the cold came in with them. The first man stepped through tall, gray-bearded, his jacket heavy with patches that glistened under the fluorescent lights. His boots hit the floor like punctuation. The second followed, built like a wall, with a scar slicing through one eyebrow and disappearing into a salt and pepper beard. The last was younger, lean, and restless. His red hair darkened by the rain. His eyes scanned the room with casual cruelty. The trio stopped at the center of the diner, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Zira had seen men like them before, but never this close, never inside her small pocket of safety. They were Hell's Angels, real ones, not the kind from movies or stories. The winged skull insignia on their backs gleamed like a dare. Evening, she managed, voice steady only because years of customer service demanded it. Coffee. The leader, she'd later learn his name was Breck Hollis, didn't answer right away. His gaze traveled slowly, taking in the cracked vinyl seats, the framed photos on the wall, the lone waitress who didn't belong to this kind of story. Finally, he nodded once. Black, he said. His voice was low, rough as gravel, the kind that filled a room without needing volume. Zira turned to the counter, pretending not to feel every pair of eyes on her back. She reached for the coffee pot, her fingers trembling just enough to make the liquid slosh against the rim. She told herself to breathe, to act normal, but normal didn't exist anymore. Something about their arrival felt deliberate, like the universe had paused its slow spin just to bring them here. As she poured the coffee into 3 mugs, she caught a reflection in the chrome napkin holder. Breck's eyes fixed on her. Not in hunger, not in threat. Something colder. Recognition. She pushed the thought away. When she set the tray down at their booth, she forced a smile. "Sugar or cream?" she asked. The younger one, Cass, grinned without warmth. "You think we look like sugar, sweetheart?" The second man, Marin, chuckled low, shaking his head. Breck didn't move. "No sugar," he said without breaking his stare. Zira turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "You from around here?" he asked. "Born here," she said carefully. "Raised by my mother." He nodded almost to himself. "Name?" She hesitated. "Zira Colburn." The way he repeated it, slow, deliberate, made her skin crawl. Colburn. It wasn't a question, it was a memory being unboxed. He looked at Marin and something silent passed between them. Cass tilted his head curious now. "That name means something to you, boss." Breck didn't answer. He only smiled, a small, knowing thing that didn't reach his eyes. Zira tried to steady her breathing, but unease coiled in her gut. Outside lightning flashed, throwing their reflections across the glass like ghosts. "You got folks here?" Marin asked, tone casual but loaded. "Just my mother," Zira said. "Selah Colburn. She lives over in Jasper County." The second she said it, the air in the diner changed again. Breck leaned back slowly, his chair creaking. "Selah," he said quietly, almost reverently. "Now that's a name I ain't heard in 20 years. Zira blinked confusion slicing through her fear. You knew her." Breck's eyes softened, in a way that frightened her more than anger would have. "You could say that." Cass's smirk vanished. Marin looked down at his mug, silent. The rain outside had turned fierce, now hammering against the glass, as if trying to drown out what was coming. "What do you want with my mother?" Zira asked, but Breck only studied her face. "You look like her," he said finally. "Same eyes, same kind of quiet." She stepped back, unsettled. This wasn't coincidence. They hadn't just picked a random diner in a forgotten town. They had come here for a reason, and somehow that reason had her mother's name written all over it. Breck reached It sat in her apron pocket, now heavy and cold, pressing against her thigh, like a reminder she couldn't escape. The chipped wing skull on its surface mirrored the one burned into her memory, the same shape she had seen on her mother's skin 100 times but never questioned. All her life, Selah Colburn had been a quiet woman, polite, but guarded the kind of mother who made every answer sound like the end of a conversation. She never talked about her 20s, never spoke of men or motorcycles or Missouri's dirt roads that led nowhere. But now, as Zira poured a cup of coffee for a trucker and forced a smile, she knew silence no longer protected her from truth. It had only delayed it. After the diner emptied, Zira grabbed her coat and headed for the old duplex on Barton Street where her mother lived. The air smelled of wet pavement and exhaust, the town small enough that everyone recognized her, small enough that secrets had to work harder to hide. When she reached Selah's porch, she hesitated. The curtains were drawn, though it was midday, and the front door, once painted pale blue, had been worn down to the wood. She knocked twice. The sound echoed inside before the door creaked open, and her mother appeared, her face lined, but strong eyes the same soft amber Zira saw in the mirror every morning. "You look like you haven't slept," Selah said, voice even but cautious. "Something happened at work." Zira stepped inside, dripping the smell of diner coffee and rain. The living room hadn't changed, lace curtains, old books stacked beside a dusty piano, a framed photo of her grandmother on the wall. "They came to the diner," Zira said, quietly. 3 of them, leather jackets, Harleys. One of them said your name. Selah froze mid-step. "My name's Ira," nodded. "He said to tell you Breck Hollis remembers, and that he didn't forget what you did or what you took." For a moment, silence pressed against the room so thick Zira could hear her heartbeat. Her mother's face drained of color, her hand trembling slightly as she reached for the edge of a chair. "Breck," she whispered like the name itself was a wound. "He's still alive." "You knew him?" Zira asked. Selah's gaze dropped to the floor. "I knew all of them once." Zira took the coin from her pocket and laid it on the table. "He left this. Same emblem as your tattoo. You want to explain now?" Selah sat down, her voice low, almost afraid to exist. "I was 22 when I met Breck. He wasn't the man you saw. Back then he wasn't Hell's Angels, yet none of them were. They called themselves the Ash Ridge Riders, just a group that believed the world owed them freedom. But freedom turns dark when anger drives it." She looked up at Zira with eyes that carried years of secrets. "When your father left, I thought I was done with that life. I left everything behind, every bike, every road, every promise. But Breck never forgave me for walking away. Forgave you for what Zira pressed." Selah sighed, her voice breaking slightly, "for taking the one thing that belonged to him." Zira frowned. "What thing?" But Selah didn't answer. She simply reached for the coin, turning it in her fingers as if weighing history itself. "I should have told you sooner," she murmured. "They were more than brothers, they were a code. Once you're in, you don't just walk out. Breck thought I was his, but I wasn't anyone's." Zira's chest tightened. "Mom, what did you take?" Before Selah could answer, the sound of an engine broke through the quiet. It wasn't one, it was three. The color drained from her mother's face. "They followed you," she whispered. Zira turned toward the window, her pulse spiking. Outside, 3 motorcycles idled at the curb, the chrome glinting in the weak afternoon sun. Breck stood at the front helmet under his arm, eyes fixed on the house as if he'd been waiting his whole life for this address. Mom Zira said, backing away. "Tell me what's going on." But Selah had already moved, pulling a small metal box from under the couch cushion. Inside were faded photographs, old patches, and a folded piece of paper yellowed by time. She shoved it into Zira's hands. "If anything happens, take this to Sheriff Lanier. He'll know what to do." "What is it proof?" she said. "Of what Breck did before I left. It's the reason he's here." A knock thundered at the door before she could explain more. Breck's voice came through calm but heavy. "Selah, it's been a long time." Selah steadied herself, eyes fierce now. "Stay behind me," she whispered to her daughter. Zira's mind raced. This couldn't be happening, not in their quiet town, not after decades of pretending the past was buried. Selah opened the door slowly, revealing Breck on the porch, Marin and Cass flanking him like shadows. The years had hardened him, but his expression wasn't anger. It was something colder, the kind of grief that calcified into rage. "You ran," he said softly, "and you took what was mine." Selah's jaw tightened. "You don't own people, Breck." His gaze flicked to Zira. "Then why does she have your eyes?" For a moment the world tilted. Zira's breath caught in her throat. "What are you saying?" she whispered. Breck smiled faintly, the truth sitting behind his teeth like poison. "I'm saying I was there, Selah. The night you left the club. The night you disappeared. You think I didn't notice what you took with you?" His hand gestured slightly toward Zira. "She's proof you can lie to everyone, but not blood." Zira stepped back, shaking her head. "That's not true," she said, but her voice cracked. Selah's face was unreadable pain buried under iron control. "You don't know what you're talking about," she said sharply. Breck's tone softened, almost kindly. Night settled over Jasper County like a slow exhale, the kind that carried secrets in its breath. Zira sat at her kitchen table with the small metal box her mother had pressed into her hands before the confrontation ended. The rain had stopped hours ago, but her heart still pounded like the engines that had faded down the road. She could hear her mother moving quietly in the other room, locking windows, closing blinds, doing all the things she used to do without explanation. Now Zira understood they weren't rituals of habit. They were habits of fear. She set the coin Breck had left beside the folded paper inside the box and studied it again under the dull kitchen light. The skull emblem caught the glow in strange ways, and for a moment she thought she saw faint lines etched beneath the surface. She reached for a lighter her mother kept near the stove and held the flame close. As the heat kissed the metal, faint letters bled into view along the rim. Ash Ridge Never Forget. Her pulse quickened. She'd heard that name once before in her mother's sleep when nightmares made her mutter things half in pain, half in prayer. Ash Ridge Riders? That was the original name of the club before they became the angels everyone feared. The letters shimmered, and for a moment she thought she saw something else, the initials SC, engraved beneath one wing. She didn't know whether to be afraid or angry. Her mother had hidden too much, and every truth she uncovered only dug the hole deeper. She rose from the table and went to the living room where Selah sat in the dark, cigarette glowing faintly between her fingers. "You lied to me," Zira said, the words trembling but sharp. "That coin, it's not just some symbol. It's yours. Your initials are on it." Selah didn't move. "You shouldn't have looked at it under heat," she said quietly. "It's dangerous to know too much about things buried that deep." "You can stop with the warnings," Mom Zira said. He said I was his daughter. You didn't even deny it. Selah stubbed the cigarette into an old coffee mug and finally looked at her. Because some lies are safer than truth, she said. But Breck's wrong about what happened. He wasn't the man I thought he was, and he wasn't the father you think you might have. Zira felt the room tilt slightly, confusion spreading through her chest like cold water. Then who is? Selah hesitated, her hands clasping tightly in her lap. A man named Louis Darden. He was part of the riders once too, a medic, the one who kept us alive on the road. He and I tried to leave together when things turned bad. Breck found out. He shot Louis outside a gas station in Oklahoma. He thought he killed him. I didn't know Louis survived until years later when he sent me that box. Zira sank into the opposite chair, her stomach twisting. Then why did Breck say you stole something? Because I did. Selah said, her voice low. Not a person. A proof. She leaned forward, pointing to the folded document in the box. That paper inside, it's a list of bank accounts, shell companies, everything the riders built when they started smuggling weapons. Breck was laundering money through them. That list was supposed to keep me quiet, but I took it and ran. I thought if I disappeared, he'd move on. But he never did. Zira's breath came shallow. Why give it to me? Because he's coming back, Selah said simply. And if something happens to me, you're the only one left who can stop him. Zira wanted to shout, to demand why her mother had dragged her into this, but the words died when she heard an engine outside 1, not 3. Selah's expression hardened. Stay here, she whispered, grabbing a small revolver from the drawer beside her chair. She moved to the window, parting the curtain just enough to look. The single headlight cut through the dark, then flicked off. Silence followed. It's not Breck, Selah murmured. He doesn't ride alone. The door creaked open before she could reach it. A figure stepped into the dim light of the porch. Cass Redden, the youngest of the three, his face bruised and his jacket torn. He raised one hand slowly, showing he was unarmed. Don't shoot, he said. I didn't come to fight. Selah kept the gun trained on him. Then why are you here? Cass glanced at Zira, then back at her mother. Because Breck's lying to you both. He doesn't want the paper. He wants to erase anyone who remembers what really happened at Ash Ridge. Selah's eyes narrowed. And what really happened? Cass hesitated, licking his cracked lip. Breck killed one of his own, Marin's brother. Claimed it was a setup, but it wasn't. Selah, you were there, you saw what he did. Selah's grip tightened on the gun. I saw enough. Cass nodded grimly. He thinks that list proves he laundered the money from the weapons deal that went wrong that night. That's why he can't let you live. Zira stood now, the room shrinking around her. Then what about me? Cass's gaze softened. He doesn't know you're his blood. Not for sure. He only suspects. That's why he's testing you. If you're who he thinks you are, he'll bring you in. If not, he let the sentence die. Selah lowered the gun slightly. Why tell us this you ride with him? Cass shook his head. Not anymore. You saved me once, remember Route 9, middle of nowhere. You bandaged my arm after Breck nearly tore it off in a bar fight. Said I was too young to die stupid. I owe you. He stepped closer, pulling a crumpled paper from his pocket. He's meeting someone tomorrow night at the quarry off Highway 6. He plans to burn the rest of the records there. You show up with that list and you can end it. But you won't make it alone. Selah took the paper from him, her face unreadable. If you're lying, I'll finish what that bar fight started, she said. The next day began with a false calm, the kind that fools people into thinking the storm is over. The sun had returned, weak and pale, spilling through the blinds of the small kitchen where Zira sat with the list of accounts spread open before her. Numbers, dates, codes, all meaningless, until she realized how much money they represented. Millions, maybe tens of millions. Breck Hollis had been laundering it through fake construction companies and shell charities for decades. If the sheriff saw this, it could end the riders for good. But that was assuming she and her mother could survive long enough to deliver it. Selah stood by the window, watching the street through the slit in the curtain. Every few seconds, her eyes flicked toward the driveway, scanning for headlights or the shimmer of chrome. We'll take the truck, she said quietly. We'll stick to the back roads until we hit Highway 6. Cass said the quarry's south of the old gravel plant. We can make it before sunset if we leave now. Zira folded the paper, slid it into her jacket pocket, and nodded. And then what? Hand it over to the sheriff. Not yet, Selah said. First, I want Breck to see it. I want him to know I didn't run because I was scared. I ran because I was done. Zira studied her mother, seeing the woman not as the gentle librarian she'd grown up with, but as someone harder forged by fire and silence. If you're trying to make peace with him, you won't get it, she said. Men like that don't forgive. They erase. Selah didn't answer. She just grabbed the keys and stepped outside. The wind smelled of dust and gasoline, and the world beyond the porch looked too bright, too clean for what they were walking into. The drive began in silence, the truck rattling down narrow farm roads past rusting silos and broken fences. Zira kept glancing at the rearview mirror, her fingers brushing the coin in her pocket for reassurance. It had become something like a charm, though she hated herself for it. When they reached the ridge overlooking the quarry, the horizon shimmered with heat. The pit below stretched wide and hollow, surrounded by jagged cliffs and piles of rusted machinery. It was the kind of place the world forgot, a place where ghosts could breathe without being noticed. Cass was already there, standing beside his bike helmet, off his face, drawn and uneasy. "You came," he said. "I wasn't sure you would." "You said sunset," Selah replied. "We're early." Cass nodded, glancing toward the ridge. "That's good. Breck won't be. He likes an audience when he wins." He pointed to the far side of the pit, where a makeshift fire pit burned weakly smoke twisting in the wind. "He's meeting Marin there first. Said something about tying up loose ends." Zira frowned. "Loose ends?" Cass looked at her. "Meaning you?" The words hit like a slap. Before she could respond, the crack of an engine echoed from behind them. Dust rose along the road they'd just driven, and the familiar gleam of Harley chrome flashed through the haze. Selah's voice dropped low. "Get down." Marin rode in alone, his leather jacket flapping in the wind. He dismounted, boots crunching gravel, shotgun in hand. "Breck said I could handle this myself," he called out. "Said you'd bring the papers to him if I gave you a reason." Cass drew his pistol, stepping forward. "Don't do this, Marin. You know she saved me once." Marin's laugh was humorless. "You think he cares? She took his money, his trust, and now his legacy. You think he'll let that go?" Selah rose slowly from behind the truck, her own revolver steady in her hand. "Put it down, Marin. You're not the killer you pretend to be." Marin's finger hovered on the trigger. "I wasn't. But time changes things." Zira watched from the side, her heart hammering so hard she could taste metal. Then Cass fired first the bullet grazing Marin's arm and sending him spinning behind a rusted barrel. Selah shouted, "Zira, run!" but her daughter stayed frozen. Gunfire cracked again, echoing through the quarry like thunder. When the smoke cleared, Marin was on the ground, clutching his bleeding arm, his shotgun lost in the dirt. "You're making this worse," he hissed. "He's coming, and when he does, there won't be anywhere to hide." Cass kicked the weapon away and looked at Selah. "Go now. I'll slow him down." Selah hesitated. "He'll kill you." "Not if he still needs someone to take the blame," Cass said with a grim smile. He turned back toward the road, his shadow long against the dirt. Zira climbed into the truck, hands trembling as she slammed the door. As Selah started the engine, Marin called out one last time, his voice cracking through the noise. "You can't run from a mark, Selah. You know what that tattoo means. It doesn't fade. It follows." Zira turned sharply. "What's he talking about?" Selah pressed harder on the gas, the truck lurching forward as the road twisted around the quarry. "Mom, what does he mean?" Selah's jaw tightened. "It's not what you think. Then tell me." For a long moment, all she heard was the rattle of the old engine and the wind slapping through the open windows. Finally, Selah spoke. "That tattoo isn't a badge of honor. It's a sentence. The winged skull wasn't given to riders who belonged. It was branded on those who betrayed. Breck said it meant brotherhood, but it really meant exile. The chip on the right wing. That's how they marked the ones they planned to hunt down later." Zira's stomach turned. "You have one too?" Selah nodded, eyes fixed on the road. I earned mine the day I walked away with proof of what he did. He swore I'd die wearing it. That's why I had to hide. The truck hit a bump, jolting them both. So, he wasn't protecting you, Zira said slowly. He was hunting you. Always has been, Selah said. And now he's using you to finish it. They drove in silence for miles until the town's lights appeared faintly in the distance. The air smelled of oil and summer heat, and the horizon burned orange as the sun dropped lower. We'll go to the sheriff, Selah said. He owes me from years back. If we can get the list to him, we'll have a chance. Zira clutched the folded paper in her lap. And if we don't? Selah didn't answer, but the look in her eyes said everything. As they neared the main road, a black truck blocked the path ahead, its headlights blinding. The roar of motorcycles followed, engines closing in from both sides. Breck had come faster than anyone expected. Selah slammed the brakes. Dust exploded around them. The first shot shattered the side mirror glass, raining across the dashboard. Zira ducked, covering her head. The second shot blew through the tire. The truck spun sideways and stopped, nose buried in the ditch. Through the haze, Breck appeared walking slow, deliberate. His shotgun resting across his shoulder. Selah's hand shook as she lowered the gun she'd been holding, the barrel hot from fear, if not from firing. Lanier stepped out his boots, crunching gravel, one hand on his holster, the other shading his eyes against the glare. He looked older than Zira remembered from her childhood, the lines on his face etched deeper, the weight of years heavy on his shoulders. "Selah," he said, slowly, voice low, calm. "You look like hell." "You should see the other guy," she replied, trying for humor, but her tone cracked halfway through. He walked closer, looking past her to Zira. "You must be the daughter. You okay?" Zira nodded, though she wasn't sure if she was lying. He crouched beside the window, eyes darting to the flat tire and shattered glass. "They didn't get what they came for, did they?" Selah shook her head. "Not yet." He nodded, once his jaw tightening. "Then we need to move. The quarry isn't safe anymore. I know a place." Selah hesitated, but opened the door. Zira followed, her legs weak, but steady enough to stand. The sheriff led them to his cruiser, the inside smelling faintly of tobacco and sun-warmed vinyl. As they drove, the radio crackled with distant chatter. Traffic stops, noise complaints, small-town things that felt ridiculous in the shadow of men who'd tried to kill them. Selah stared out the window, her reflection pale against the passing trees. "You know he's not going to stop," she said finally. "He's waited too long to let this end quietly." Lanier's hands tightened on the wheel. "I know." "Then why are you helping us?" Zira asked. The sheriff's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, catching hers for just a second. "Because I owe your mother, and because I've seen what Breck Hollis does to people who cross him. You don't walk away from a man like that, you crawl." He turned down an unmarked road, the pavement giving way to dirt. The cruiser jolted with each rut, the trees growing thicker shadows, swallowing the light. "Used to be a ranger station out here," he said. "Long shut down, but the lines still work. We can call for backup from there." The building appeared ahead, half hidden behind wild pines, a small cabin, the roof sagging but intact. Inside, dust coated everything, but the air felt strangely still, almost preserved. Lanier pulled the radio from his belt, tried to raise dispatch, then shook his head. "Signal's weak this far out. I'll need to try the old landline." Selah stood near the wall, arms crossed, watching him closely. "You were one of them, weren't you?" she said suddenly. He froze. "What?" "You flinched when Marin's name came up back at the diner. You knew the riders." His shoulders dropped, the truth deflating him. Once he admitted. Back before they called themselves Angels. I was undercover for state enforcement trying to crack their weapons routes in the 80s. Breck found out before I could finish. That's when I got this. He pulled up his sleeve, revealing the faint outline of a winged skull tattoo, the right wing slashed through, faded almost to invisibility. Zira stared, realization sinking deep. "He marked you too." Lanier nodded. Said it was a warning. Said betrayal earns its own wings. I was lucky to make it out alive. Selah's voice dropped. "You should have told me. You already knew," he said quietly. "You just didn't want to admit it." The air between them thickened, heavy with shared history neither of them wanted to reopen. Zira listened, feeling the world tilt again. Every adult in her life seemed to be part of some forgotten war, one that refused to stay buried. What does he really want, she asked. It's not just about money. Lanier looked at her, then really looked. No, he said. It's about what that money was meant to buy. He reached into his pocket and unfolded a yellowed newspaper clipping, edges frayed from time. The headline read, "Fire at Ash Ridge Compound, child missing, presumed dead." Below it, a grainy photograph showed a small house engulfed in smoke, and beneath the image, the names of 3 riders listed as deceased. Zira scanned the article, her stomach twisting. What does this have to do with us? Everything Lanier said. Breck had a son, born in '97, back when the club started running contraband through the Dakotas. The boy was caught in that fire. Official story said he died, but Breck never believed it. He thought someone took him before the fire spread. That's when the disappearances started, the ones tied to people who crossed him. He paused, eyes steady on Selah. And you were there that night. Selah closed her eyes. I tried to get the boy out. I thought he was dead when I carried him, but he wasn't. He coughed, cried once, then went still again. I took him to the roadside, but by the time I came back, the fire had spread too far. I didn't know what to do. So I left. Lanier's voice hardened. You left Breck believing his son was burned alive. And then a year later, you show up in Missouri with a baby girl who doesn't have a birth certificate until 2 months after that fire. Zira felt her throat close. You're saying I'm saying you might be, Lanier said gently. The dates match. The initials do too. ZC, they could stand for Zira Colburn, or for Zane Colburn, the name Breck gave his son before the fire. He believes you're the child that disappeared. Zira shook her head violently. No, that's impossible. Selah stepped forward. She's mine, Lanier. I raised her. And I'm not doubting that, he said. But you need to understand Breck doesn't care about blood. He cares about legacy. If he finds out there's even a chance you're that kid, he'll use you to rebuild what he lost. The room fell silent, except for the faint hum of the old refrigerator in the corner. Zira felt like her bones were turning to dust. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered. Selah's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. Because I didn't want you to grow up being hunted. I wanted you to have one piece of life that wasn't borrowed from the ashes of mine. Before Lanier could respond, a loud thud shook the door. He drew his gun instantly, motioning for them to stay back. Another hit followed, then the crack of a boot. The door splintered inward and a body collapsed into the room, Cass red and bruised, bleeding, gasping for air. He's coming, Cass rasped. He knows about the list. He knows you came here. Lanier crouched beside him, checking his pulse. Where are the others? Dead Cass coughed. He shot Marin himself. Said there's no more loyalty, only proof. He grabbed Zira's wrist, eyes wild. He wants the girl alive. Said she's his key. Said the ashes always keep their blood. Then his body went limp. Eyes glassy, the last breath fading from his lungs. She could see them through the trees now, 3 bikes. At first, then more, a dozen riders cutting through the clearing, their engines merging into one low growl that felt almost alive. Breck Hollis was among them, helmet off, gray hair whipped by the wind shotgun hanging across his chest. He wasn't shouting orders. He didn't need to. The men behind him moved like extensions of his will. Sheriff Lanier chambered around into his pistol, eyes steady. They won't all come at once, he said. He'll send the first few to test the door. When they break through, you two take the back exit. Follow the dirt path about half a mile. There's a service tunnel that runs under the ridge. It'll take you to the road on the other side. Selah shook her head. I'm not leaving you. You will, Lanier said firmly. You still have the list. You still have a chance to end this. He looked at Zira, then his gaze softer. You've got her eyes, he murmured. The same stubborn kind. Don't waste that. The sound of boots and metal rattled against the door. The first shot came splintering the frame. Lanier returned fire, the recoil echoing like thunder through the small cabin. Go, he shouted. Selah grabbed Zira's arm, dragging her toward the back hallway. Zira looked over her shoulder just long enough to see Lanier crouch behind the table, his gun steady as glass shattered, and the front wall lit up with muzzle flashes. The last thing she saw before turning away was the sheriff's silhouette, framed in light, calm, and unflinching as the storm hit. They slipped out the back, stumbling through the mud and brush. The forest seemed endless trees closing around them like ribs of a giant beast. Zira's lungs burned, her pulse deafening in her ears. Gunfire echoed faintly behind them, then stopped. Silence followed a silence so absolute that it told her everything she didn't want to know. Sela didn't slow until they reached the mouth of the service tunnel, a concrete opening half buried in moss. She pushed Zira inside first, then followed flashlight trembling in her hand. The tunnel was narrow, smelling of earth and rust water dripping from somewhere unseen. Their footsteps echoed as they moved, the darkness pressing close. "He's dead." "Isn't he?" Zira said finally, her voice breaking. Lanier Sela's breath hitched. "He made his choice," she said. "We have to make ours count." Zira stopped walking. "You said he owed you." Why Sela hesitated. "Because he helped me once before. When I first came here before you were born, I told him I was running from an abusive man. He didn't ask questions. He gave me a job, helped me get papers. But he always knew it was more than that." Zira turned the flashlight toward her mother. "More than running from Breck." Sela nodded slowly. "More than Breck." They emerged from the tunnel into the open air. The road stretched ahead, shimmering in the afternoon heat. Zira squinted against the light, realizing how far they'd come. Behind them, the forest looked deceptively still, but she could feel the danger moving within it, patient as a hunter. "We'll take the truck Lanier keeps at the trailhead," Sela said, leading her toward a small clearing where a rusted pickup sat under a tarp. As they climbed inside, Zira pulled out the folded paper still intact in her jacket pocket. She stared at the list of accounts again. "Why didn't you give this to the police years ago? You could have ended him." Sela's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Because it's not just names and numbers. That list ties half this county to Breck's money. Judges, deputies, business owners, they all took their share. If I turned it in, then it wouldn't have stopped him. It would have buried me." The truck sputtered to life. The road curved north, cutting through open fields. The horizon glowed orange with the setting sun. Zira tried not to look back, but the sound of distant engines haunted the edge of her hearing. "Mom," she said quietly, "there's something else you're not telling me." Sela didn't answer, but the tension in her shoulders deepened. "He said I might be his blood," Zira continued. "You never denied it, because it doesn't matter," Sela said. "You're mine. I raised you. Blood doesn't change that. That's not an answer. It's the only one that keeps you safe." Zira slammed her palm against the dashboard. "Safe from what? The truth?" Sela's eyes flashed. "From becoming what he is." The words hung between them, sharp as broken glass. Then softer, she added, "You were never supposed to know about that fire. I told myself if I could just raise you far from it, the past would stay buried. But it didn't." Zira said, "It found us." The road narrowed into a single-lane stretch, lined by trees. The first gunshot came from behind a sharp crack that shattered the rear window. Sela swerved, glass raining down. In the mirror, headlights closed in fast. 2 bikes, not 12. Breck had sent a smaller team this time. "Hold on," Sela said, pressing the pedal to the floor. The truck groaned, engine straining. One of the bikers pulled alongside, face hidden by a black visor. He raised a pistol. Zira ducked as the bullet tore through the passenger door. Without thinking, she grabbed the coin from her pocket and flung it toward him. It struck the visor, the flash of impact enough to make him lose balance. His bike swerved, clipped the second rider, and both went down in a shower of sparks. Sela didn't slow until they reached an abandoned way station a few miles ahead. She killed the engine and sat back, chest heaving. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Zira whispered, "That coin saved us." "No," Sela said, "you did." She reached into the glove box and pulled out a faded photograph. Edges singed. It showed a small house engulfed in smoke, the same one from the newspaper clipping Lanier had shown them. You asked what really happened that night, Selah said. You deserve to know before he tells you his version. Zira's throat went dry. Tell me. Selah's eyes didn't leave the picture. There was a boy in that house. Breck's son. The club was burning evidence that could link them to the weapons shipment gone wrong. I was supposed to take the boy out, make sure no one found him dead or alive. They didn't want loose ends. But when the fire started, I panicked. I tried to save myself. I left him there. The words hit like cold water. You let him die. I didn't mean to. Selah said, tears catching in her voice. I thought I could go back for him, but the house collapsed before I did. I carried guilt for years. That's why I took you when you were born. Not because you were his, but because you reminded me of what I'd done. You were my second chance. Zira couldn't speak. The truth hollowed her out, left nothing but echoes. So you didn't steal his son, she said finally. You stole his redemption. Selah nodded slowly. And he's been chasing it ever since. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the faint smell of gasoline and smoke. Selah started the engine again. The road ahead glistened with fresh rain, and for the first time, Zira noticed how the night smelled different beyond the county line. The air felt thinner, lighter, almost free. But freedom wasn't what waited for them. It was reckoning. A pair of headlights appeared behind them, distant but steady, following at the same speed. Don't panic, Selah said softly, her fingers tightening on the steering wheel. We'll turn off before the next bridge. They can't follow through the river crossing. Zira reached into her jacket for the folded list, her thumb tracing the inked names in the dark. They already know we're alive. You think a bridge will stop them? No, Selah said. But maybe what I've carried all these years will. Her tone shifted calm, but strange, as if she'd made a decision she wasn't ready to explain. Zira, the tattoo. You remember the one on my arm? How could I forget? It's why this all started. There's something you don't know about it, Selah said. The skull and wings, it isn't just a symbol, it's a map. Zira frowned. A map to what? To the cache, Selah replied. All the guns, money, and contraband Breck buried after the Ash Ridge fire. He couldn't destroy it without losing his power, so he hid it. The riders who bore the mark were given parts of the code. Mine carries the coordinates. Zira stared disbelief, mixing with exhaustion. You're saying your tattoo is a blueprint to the entire operation, in ultraviolet ink, Selah said. Invisible, unless exposed to blacklight. Lanier helped me confirm it years ago. That's why Breck never stopped chasing me. I wasn't his loose end, I was his key. Zira's mind raced, every memory rearranging itself. Then why didn't you burn it off? Because some debts can't be erased, Selah whispered. Only paid. The truck rounded a bend and the headlights behind them vanished suddenly. For a moment, Zira felt relief. Then a sharp thud hit the side mirror, shattering it. A second impact followed metal on metal, brutal and close. The truck swerved. He's here, Selah hissed. Breck's black Harley appeared beside them, the engine growling like a predator that had finally cornered its prey. His shotgun glinted under the moonlight, and in the split second before he aimed, Zira saw his face cold, relentless, and certain. Selah jerked the wheel, sending the truck skidding toward the embankment. The vehicle flipped once, twice, before slamming to a stop in the ditch. Everything went silent except the ringing in Zira's ears. She tried to move, pain slicing through her shoulder. The windshield was gone, glass scattered like frozen stars. "Mom!" she shouted. Selah didn't answer. She was slumped against the driver's door, blood streaking her forehead. Zira forced the seatbelt loose, crawled across broken glass, and pulled her mother free. Her hands shook, her breath coming fast and shallow. The sound of boots on gravel froze her. Breck's shadow stretched long against the wreck his figure framed in red taillight glow. He stepped closer, lowering the shotgun, but not lowering his voice. "I didn't want it to end this way," he said, "but you never gave me a choice." Zira backed away, pulling Selah behind her. "You did this," she said. "You burned that house. You killed that boy." Breck's eyes flickered, but only for a heartbeat. You think I'd destroy my own blood? You destroyed everything else, Zira spat. He looked at her like a man studying a puzzle that didn't quite fit. You still don't understand, he said quietly. I didn't burn that house. She did. He pointed at Sela, motionless on the ground. Zira's breath caught. You're lying. Am I? He asked. She told you half a story. The part that makes her the victim. Ask her why that wing on her tattoo is chipped. Ask her what she carved over it. Zira shook her head. Stop. Breck lowered the shotgun, his tone almost gentle. I gave her that mark, but she changed it. She cut through the right wing herself the night she took something from me that wasn't hers. What was it, Zira demanded? A name, he said, a promise. She took it and made it hers. You. He stepped closer, and the air seemed to freeze around them. You were never just redemption to her girl. You were her replacement for the one she couldn't save. That's what she's been running from. Zira clenched her fists, fury burning through her confusion. You don't get to rewrite her story. I don't need to, Breck said. I lived it. He kicked aside the gravel, revealing a small flashlight that must have fallen from the truck. He turned it on, shining it toward Sela's arm. Under the beam, faint lines glowed along the ink of the tattoo, forming a pattern. Numbers, coordinates, curved lines connecting them like veins. You see, he said softly. Even her skin betrays her. Zira stared, the realization cutting deep. It was true the lines formed a map. Breck leaned down, tracing the glow with his fingers. You bring me that list, he said. You and your mother can walk away. You'll kill her the second you get it, Zira said. Breck's smirk was tired, almost sad, probably. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a lighter engraved with the rider's emblem. You've got until sunrise. After that, she burns like the rest. He turned and whistled sharply. Two bikers emerged from the shadows, their faces masked, their weapons gleaming. Take her, Breck ordered, motioning to Sela. She's the key. Zira lunged, but one of the men shoved her back, the butt of his rifle slamming into her ribs. She hit the dirt, gasping for air, as they lifted her mother's limp body into the bed of a black pickup. Breck watched without emotion, then mounted his Harley. Bring the girl if she follows, he told his men. But don't bother if she doesn't. She'll find what's left soon enough. The engines roared again, fading into the night, leaving Zira in the ditch, surrounded by shards of glass and her mother's blood. For a long time, she couldn't move. Her body ached, her lungs burned, but her mind refused to stop. The tattoo, the map, the coordinates, they were all connected. Breck thought he had won, but he'd made one mistake. He'd shown her the truth. Slowly, she pushed herself up, wincing as pain flared in her shoulder. She limped back to the overturned truck and dug through the debris until she found the folded paper miraculously unharmed. Under the dim moonlight, she opened it beside the faint glow of the lighter Breck had dropped. The list wasn't just financial, it contained codes, phrases coordinates matching the ones on Sela's tattoo. Each line pointed to a different site, but one stood out, circled twice in faded ink. Ridge Mile 17 First Fire. Zira clenched the paper in her fist. That was where it began, where the riders burned everything they couldn't own. If she could get there first, she could end it. She tore a strip from her sleeve, tied it around her bleeding arm, and looked at the horizon. The sky was beginning to lighten, a thin band of gray splitting the dark. Zira's breath came in ragged bursts as she climbed the final stretch on foot, the rising dawn bleeding pink across the jagged horizon. Her clothes were torn, her shoulder throbbed from the crash, and every muscle in her body ached. But the fire inside her burned too fiercely to notice. The folded list pressed against her chest like a second heartbeat. Each coordinate marked on the page had led nowhere, abandoned farms, dried wells, forgotten barns, until she reached this one. Ridge Mile 17, the place that had started it all, the place the fire had consumed decades ago. Now it stood silent again, a charred skeleton of earth and rusted steel. Smoke still lingered in the soil, faint and ghostly, as if the ground itself remembered what it had swallowed. Zira walked past the collapsed shack at the ridge's edge, her boots crunching ash. The wind carried whispers of metal gasoline and burnt memory. In the distance, the skeletal remains of a billboard leaned sideways, its faded words just legible enough to read, "Ash Ridge Quarry, home of tomorrow's industry." The irony stung. Tomorrow's industry had become yesterday's ruin. She pulled out the coin Breck once gave her and knelt beside a patch of scorched concrete. Under the early light, faint etchings glimmered symbols matching those carved into her mother's tattoo. Her pulse spiked. She brushed away the dirt and found a rusted hatch half buried beneath the gravel. The lock was broken, the hinges stiff but still workable. She gritted her teeth and forced it open. A rush of stale air greeted her, heavy with oil and decay. Below, a staircase spiraled into darkness. Zira gripped the edge of the hatch, steadying herself, then descended. The air grew colder the deeper she went. The tunnel opened into a large chamber, half-collapsed, the walls lined with rotting crates and half-buried barrels. She flicked on her flashlight, the beam cutting through dust thick as fog. Each crate was marked with the rider's emblem, the winged skull, and stamped with codes that matched the ones on the list. "You buried your sins deep," she whispered. She pried open the nearest crate and stared. Inside lay rows of assault rifles wrapped in oiled cloth, still gleaming beneath the dust. Another crate held stacks of cash sealed in plastic, the green edges crisp and untouched, but what froze her was the small metal trunk at the far corner of the room, locked tight and cleaner than the rest, as though someone had been here recently. She approached it cautiously and brushed off the grime. A nameplate glimmered beneath her light S. Colburn. Her heart stopped. She dropped to her knees, trembling fingers working the latch. Inside were papers, a pistol, and a sealed envelope with her mother's handwriting. She unfolded the letter, her vision blurring as she read. "If you're reading this, it means the fire didn't end what it was supposed to. I came here once intending to destroy everything Breck built. I couldn't do it. I thought running would keep you safe. I was wrong. If you ever find this place, finish what I couldn't. End it. Not for me, for every life he burned to build his empire." Zira pressed the letter to her chest, her throat tightening. Her mother had known all along that this place existed. She had hidden her own guilt in the ashes, just like Breck. And now it fell to Zira to finish what both of them started. She picked up the pistol, its weight steady in her hand. Then the faint echo of footsteps reached her from above, heavy, deliberate, approaching the hatch. Her blood ran cold. She turned off the flashlight and moved behind the stack of crates, crouching low. A moment later, light spilled down the staircase, followed by voices. "Easy now," Breck's gravelly tone drifted through the chamber. "We don't want the lady falling apart before the reunion." Zira's stomach twisted. He had Sela. The metallic drag of chains scraped against the floor, followed by a soft cry muffled by a gag. Zira peeked from behind the crates and saw him, Breck, his silver hair catching the dim light, his shotgun slung casually over his shoulder. Two riders followed, one dragging Sela forward. Her wrists were bound, her face pale but defiant. "You always were good at hiding things," Breck said to Sela, voice almost affectionate. "You hid my map, you hid my money, and now you've hidden my heir." Sela spat blood. "You don't have an heir." Breck smiled faintly. "That's what you told yourself to sleep at night." He turned his eyes, scanning the shadows. "Come on out, girl. You're not as quiet as you think." Zira froze, holding her breath. "I can smell the dirt on your boots," he continued. "Same soil as this place. Same as the day you were born." Slowly she rose, pistol aimed, stepping into the beam of his flashlight. "Let her go." Breck chuckled softly. "You have her eyes." "Did she tell you how she earned that mark?" Zira's grip tightened. "She told me everything." "Did she tell you she came here once before Breck asked? That she stood in this very room with a can of gasoline and a lighter and still couldn't do it? That she chose to run instead of finish what she started?" Sela's voice cracked. "Stop it," Breck asked. "You think she deserves your loyalty? She made me the monster you're hunting. She set the fire, not me. I was trying to save my son from her." Zira's voice shook. "You expect me to believe that?" Breck shrugged. "Believe what you want? But before you shoot me, maybe you should open the trunk in the corner." Zira frowned. "What trunk, the one you didn't touch?" he said. "Behind the barrels. Go on. See what you've been fighting for." Against her better judgment, Zira glanced toward the spot he mentioned. There was another trunk there, larger, sealed with a padlock. She kept her gun raised but stepped closer, flicking the lock with her flashlight. The engraving read, YVC, her initials. Confusion swirled. She turned back to Breck. "What is this insurance?" he said. "I always knew the truth would crawl back out of the dirt. I just didn't think it would walk on two legs." He gestured to Selah. "Tell her, or I will." Selah shook her head weakly. "Don't listen." Breck's eyes hardened. "You're not her mother, and you never were. That boy you left in the fire, he didn't die. I pulled him out myself. He grew up, he turned into me, and she—" He pointed at Zira. "She's what you made in his place. A ghost of guilt wearing someone else's name." Zira's world tilted. "You're saying that I'm a replacement," Breck said simply. "And like all replacements, you're disposable." He raised the shotgun. The blast shattered the crate beside her, splinters flying. Zira dove behind the barrel's heart-pounding gun, slipping from her grasp. Another shot echoed this one closer. She scrambled for cover, her mother's voice breaking through the chaos. "Run!" Zira Selah screamed. "Don't let him win!" Breck turned toward her, fury flashing. "You had your chance," he snarled. He aimed, but Zira grabbed the fallen flashlight, twisting it toward him. The beam hit his eyes, and for a split second, the ultraviolet reflection from Selah's tattoo illuminated the entire wall. The glowing lines formed a perfect circle around the bunker's perimeter, a pattern connected to a single switch embedded in the floor. Every breath was a battle. The ridge burned behind her flames, devouring the last of the crates and barrels, the old rider's insignia, melting into ash. She stumbled forward, coughing, the pistol still clutched in her shaking hand. The world looked unreal, colors too bright, sounds muffled as if wrapped in cotton. Her ears rang from the explosion, and for a terrifying moment she thought she was deaf. Then faintly came the sound she dreaded most, the rumble of an engine. Not distant, not imagined. Real. She turned, heart hammering, and saw him through the haze. Breck Hollis. His jacket burned in places, one sleeve missing half his face, smeared black with soot and blood. His shotgun was gone, but his presence, his fury, was untouched. He staggered, one leg dragging slightly, but the same fire burned in his eyes. "You think fire can kill me?" He rasped, voice raw but steady. "I built my life out of it." Zira raised the gun, though her arm trembled so badly she could barely aim. "Stay back." Breck smiled faintly, his teeth streaked red. "You've got her eyes," he said again, almost tenderly. "The same eyes that watched me crawl out of that house 30 years ago." He took another step forward. "You think you did something heroic down there, lighting up that hole. You only burned ghosts. The truth is still alive." She fired. The shot tore through his shoulder, spinning him sideways. He fell to one knee but didn't stay down. He looked up at her with something that wasn't pain, something closer to admiration. "Good aim," he grunted, "but not good enough." He reached into his jacket and threw something toward her, a metal disc blackened at the edges. It landed near her feet with a dull clink. When she bent to look, her blood ran cold. It was the coin, the same one she'd thrown at his man during the chase. "You think anything that belongs to me ever really leaves?" Breck said. "That coin's been with every generation of this club since the first fire. It's not just a token, it's a signature. It carries my blood." Zira frowned. "What are you talking about?" "You'll find out soon enough," he said, "if you live that long." Then he turned and limped toward the line of trees, disappearing into the smoke before she could pull the trigger again. She fired once, twice, but the bullets hit empty air. The forest swallowed him whole. For the first time since it began, Zira didn't chase. She dropped the gun, collapsed to her knees, and let the wind hit her face. Tears cut lines through the soot, stinging as they fell. "Mom," she whispered. "Please." There was no answer. Only the sound of crackling fire and the faint hiss of cooling metal. She searched through the wreckage for hours, calling Selah's name until her voice broke. Nothing. Just scorched earth and melted steel. When the fire crews arrived at noon, they found her slumped against a half-buried wall, the letter from Selah still clutched in her hand. They wrapped her in a blanket, gave her water, asked questions she couldn't answer. The local sheriff, someone younger, now someone who didn't know the ghosts of Ash Ridge, told her they'd found no other bodies. Explosion like that, he said, if anyone else was down there, there's not enough left to find. Zira nodded numbly. They took her to the nearest clinic, patched her wounds, gave her a bed. She didn't sleep that night or the next. On the third morning, she woke to the smell of antiseptic and old coffee, and a voice she thought she'd never hear again. You always were too stubborn to stay down. Her head jerked towards the doorway. Selah stood there, wrapped in a hospital blanket, pale but alive. Zira's breath caught. "Mom," she whispered. How Selah managed a tired smile. An old friend pulled me out. Doc Healy, the one who used to patch up riders after brawls. He lives near the ridge. Found me half buried under the old tunnel entrance. I don't know how long I was out. Zira rose from the bed, still unsteady, and crossed the room in 3 strides. She hugged her mother fiercely, feeling her heartbeat through the thin blanket. "I thought you were gone." "So did I," Selah murmured. "But I guess the fire wasn't ready for me yet." Zira pulled back, studying her. "Breck's alive." Selah's expression darkened. "Of course he is. Men like him don't die easy." He said things. Zira continued. "About me. About being made." Selah froze, her eyes flickering away. "He said I wasn't your daughter. That I was created. That his blood stopped," Selah said sharply. "He's twisting it." "Then tell me the truth," Zira said. "All of it. I'm done running from half-truths." For a long moment, Selah said nothing. Then she sat on the edge of the bed, her shoulders trembling. "He's not wrong," she said quietly. "But he's not right either. You're not his daughter in the way he means it. But part of him, part of his blood is in you." Zira's stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" After the fire, Selah said Breck lost everything, his son, his crew, his empire, but he wasn't content to grieve. He wanted to build something that couldn't die. One of his men had a sister working at a private research lab out west. She was part of an experimental surrogacy program funded by shell accounts tied to the riders' money. They were testing gene recovery, trying to regrow lineage from preserved DNA. Zira stared, unable to speak. "You mean cloning?" "Not exactly," Selah said. "They called it replication therapy, using remnants of genetic material to rebuild family lines. He sent samples from his son's remains. But when the lab went dark after the investigation, they smuggled out what was left. I found one of the doctors months later. She told me a child had survived gestation, unclaimed, scheduled for termination. I took you. I gave you a name. Zira Colburn." Zira staggered back, every breath jagged. "So I'm not—" "You're my daughter," Selah said firmly. "No lab, no man, no ghost changes that. But Breck, he sees you as proof that his blood can't die," Selah said. "That's why he'll never stop. To him, you're not a person. You're his resurrection." The room spun. "Then how do we end this?" "We finish what we started," Selah said. "He still has his network, the accounts, the safe houses. But now that the cash is gone, he'll run to his last fallback, the airstrip near Jasper. If we get there first, we can intercept his last transfer and end the riders' line for good. And if he's waiting, then we burn what's left," Selah said. "And this time we make sure the fire remembers." That night they left the clinic under cover of dark, driving a borrowed truck along the river. The airstrip lay 10 miles south, hidden beyond the hills. Zira watched her mother from the passenger seat, the glow of the dashboard cutting lines of light across her face. The tattoo on Selah's arm was mostly burned away now, the skin raw and healing, but beneath the scar tissue, faint blue lines still pulsed under certain light. The night air was cold and electric when Zira and Selah reached the old Jasper airstrip. The runway stretched out before them like a scar in the earth. Cracked asphalt weeds growing through the seams, hangars leaning under the weight of the years. The hum of a single generator echoed faintly from one of the hangars, its weak light casting long shadows across the tarmac. Somewhere inside, Breck Hollis was waiting. The motorcycle that had followed them for miles sat idle near the fuel depot, its engine still ticking from heat. Zira gripped the pistol tighter, feeling the pulse in her wrist match the rhythmic blink of the generator's dying bulb. "He's here," she whispered. Sela nodded, her face hard, but pale. "Then we end this." They stepped into the hangar. The air inside was thick with the smell of gasoline and rust, and in the center stood Breck, leaning against a crate, his jacket open and his shotgun discarded beside him. His face was half-bandaged, the burn scars raw and jagged beneath. He didn't move when they entered. He just watched the faintest smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I was wondering how long it would take," he said. His voice was hoarse, rougher now, but the authority in it still commanded the air. "You both look tired. It's over, Breck," Sela said, raising her gun. "You don't have anything left." "Don't I?" he asked. He gestured toward a nearby crate. On it sat a small metal case open filled with papers, bank accounts, deeds names all marked with the rider's insignia. "Everything I built. Every deal, every man who ever swore loyalty to me, it's all right there. You could burn it now and end my legacy. But that's not why you're here," Zira stepped closer, her gun steady. "I'm here to make sure no one else has to live with what you made." Breck nodded slowly. "Good. That's what I hoped for." He coughed a deep, wet sound that left him shaking. Blood stained the edge of his bandage. "You don't think I know what I am? I'm dying, girl. The fire didn't kill me, but it took what was left of me. I've got months, maybe weeks. The riders are done. But I needed to see what survived me." "You mean me," Zira said. "You hunted me, killed for me." "No," Breck said, his voice softening. "I hunted to make sure what I left behind wasn't empty. I built something terrible, and I needed to know if anything good could crawl out of it. You were the only part of that story that wasn't written in blood." Selah's voice cracked. "You think that makes you some kind of savior?" "No," Breck said. "It makes me desperate." He turned his gaze on Zira, eyes dim but piercing. "You're my last chance at meaning. You carry both of us her mercy, my fire. You can destroy everything I made, but you can't destroy the fact that you came from it." Zira shook her head. "You don't get to claim me." "I already did," Breck said quietly. "The day you survived the fire. It changed you. Fire always does." He looked at the pistol in her hand. "Go ahead. Do what your mother couldn't." The words hung in the air like smoke. Zira raised the gun, her arm steady, her finger brushing the trigger. Sela stood behind her, breathing hard eyes, glistening. "Don't," she whispered. "You don't need to kill him to end him." Breck closed his eyes. Maybe she does. For a long moment, everything was silent except the flickering hum of the light. Then Zira lowered the gun. "No," she said. "You wanted me to become you. I won't." Breck opened his eyes, surprise flickering through the exhaustion. "Then what are you going to do?" Zira glanced at the open fuel line running along the wall, the gasoline pooling near the hangar's edge. She holstered the pistol, grabbed a nearby flare, and struck it. The red flame roared to life, bathing the hangar in crimson light. "I'm going to finish what the fire started," she said. "Not to erase you, but to free us." She tossed the flare into the pool of gasoline. The explosion wasn't violent. Like the bunkers, it was slow spreading like dawn. Flames crawled across the floor, licking the crates, devouring the papers, turning decades of corruption into curling ash. Breck didn't move. He just watched the blaze rise, his expression almost peaceful. "That's it," he murmured. "That's the sound I remember." Sela grabbed Zira's arm. "We have to go." Zira hesitated, watching Breck through the growing smoke. "Mom, he's not even trying to run. He's already gone," Sela said. "You can't save him." But as they turned to leave, Breck's voice called out one last time. "Zira." She stopped. He was still sitting beside the burning crate's fire, reflecting in his eyes like dying stars. "Don't waste what I gave you," he said. "Don't let them bury it. The world's full of men like me. If you don't burn it down, they'll build it again." His words echoed through the roar of flames. Then the ceiling gave way, and the fire swallowed him whole. Zira didn't move for a long moment. The smoke pressed against her lungs thick and choking, but her feet felt rooted. Sela pulled her back, just as the roof collapsed, dragging her out into the cold night. They stumbled across the tarmac, coughing, until they reached the dirt road beyond the airstrip. Behind them, the hangar burned bright, a tower of orange and gold that painted the clouds. For the first time in years, Zira saw her mother cry, not from fear, but from release. "It's done," Sela said. "He's gone." Zira watched the fire climb higher, sparks rising into the sky. "No," she said softly. "He's not gone. He's just not here anymore." They stood in silence, watching the blaze until it began to fade. The horizon glowed faintly dawn, chasing away the darkness. Zira turned to Sela. "What do we do now we live?" Sela said simply. "We build something that doesn't have to burn to survive." Zira nodded, though her heart still felt heavy. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the coin, the same one Breck had thrown at her, blackened now from flame. The skull engraving was nearly gone, melted smooth by heat. She tossed it into the ashes. "He built his world from fire," she said. "We'll build ours from what's left." Sela smiled faintly, the first true smile in years. "That's my girl." As the sun broke over the ridge, the last of the flames died down, leaving behind only smoke and silence. The air smelled of endings, but also of something else beginnings. Zira took her mother's hand, the two of them walking toward the horizon, where the past finally loosened its grip. Behind them, the ashes of Breck Hollis and the riders scattered into the wind carried far beyond the valley that had once belonged to men who believed the world could be owned by fire. Zira knew better now. Fire didn't claim it cleansed. It didn't destroy. It gave the chance to start again. She looked back one last time, whispered something only the wind could hear, and then turned away for good. The end. If this story moved you, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes redemption can come from fire. Tell us what you think of Zira's final choice. Did she do the right thing? And drop in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel.